The Florida you see on postcards exists. It has idyllic beaches, Disney World, and movie-worthy sunsets. But that's only part of the story. Behind the tourist glamour, there is an entire state struggling with problems that few dare to mention. While some post photos in Miami Beach and shop on Lincoln Road, others sleep in tents under overpasses or become addicted to synthetic drugs that cost $5 a dose. There are cities with poverty rates higher than some Central American countries. There are elderly people being exploited in million-dollar scams. There are young people wasting their lives in the middle of paradise. And a middle class that supports it all with taxes and silence. There are corrupt politicians selling influence, influencers turning addiction into a lifestyle, crowded shopping malls for some, overcrowded shelters for others. Today on Bello Mundo, we're going to show you a state that is unequal, addicted, violent, and abandoned. Number 1. The postcard. Florida is located in the southeastern United States, bordered by the Atlantic Ocean on one side and the Gulf of Mexico on the other. The state is famous for its tropical climate, idyllic beaches, theme parks, and vibrant cities such as Miami, Orlando, and Tampa. It is one of the most visited destinations in the world, and not by chance. The region has everything that fuels the American tourist imagination. Disney in Orlando, the millionaire yachts of Fort Lauderdale, the graffiti of Wynwood, the sunsets of Key West, the nightlife of Miami Beach. To outsiders, Florida looks like an endless summer vacation commercial. But the reality, as always, is more complex. The state now has more than 22 million inhabitants. It is the third most populous in the country. It receives millions of tourists a year, has a GDP of over $1 trillion, and at the same time has some of the worst social indicators in the United States. Just leave the tourist routes to see another side of Florida. Entire neighborhoods marked by extreme poverty, cities with alarming crime rates, overcrowded hospitals, schools with a shortage of teachers, and thousands of people living on the streets. It is a state that concentrates wealth and misery in the same neighborhood, where you can find a Lamborghini parked in front of a pawn shop, where low taxes attract millionaires, but the cost of living drives out the middle class, and where the sun shines almost every day, but does not shine equally on all residents. To understand how Florida got to this point, we need to look back, because today's problems began to form a long time ago. Number 2. History. Florida wasn't always this hub of tourism, retirement, and cultural influence. Until the early 20th century, it was a mostly rural territory, with swamps, farming communities, and few structured cities. But all that changed when the railroad tracks rolled in. It was in the late 1800s that Henry Flagler, a railroad magnate, decided to transform Florida's East Coast into an elite destination. He built hotels, extended the railroad tracks southward, and paved the way for tourists from the northern United States to discover the tropical paradise of the South. Fame grew quickly, and with it, investment. In the 50s and 60s, the boom really took off. The construction of Disney World on the outskirts of Orlando in the 70s consolidated Florida as the global tourism capital. Thousands of people moved there in search of work, sunshine, and a cheaper life than in the northern states. But this rapid growth came without restraint and without planning. Cities expanded at an uncontrolled pace. Condominiums sprang up in flood-prone areas, urban centers formed without basic infrastructure, and real estate speculation began to dictate the pace of life. Miami, for example, became synonymous with tropical paradise and the Latin epicenter of the United States. But it also became one of the most expensive and unequal markets in the country. Orlando, meanwhile, has filled up with tourists and resorts. But away from the parks, working-class neighborhoods struggled to survive on low wages and high living costs. Today, Florida is one of the fastest-growing states in terms of population, but also one of the most challenged in terms of accommodating so many people. It is as if the state was built to welcome visitors, but not to take care of those who decide to live there. And this fragile foundation has become even more evident in recent years, when housing began to be scarce. Number 3. High costs and housing crisis. The image of beachfront mansions, palm tree-lined condominiums, and neighbors parading around in golf carts does exist, but it is far from the reality of most people. This scenario is concentrated in tourist neighborhoods. Outside these areas, the picture is very different. Florida is currently experiencing one of the worst housing crises in the United States. Between 2021 and 2024, the average rent rose by more than 50%, and in large cities such as Tampa, Orlando, and Miami, prices have skyrocketed. Long-time residents are being forced out by prices that have become impossible to pay, and even those who continue to work are often homeless. In Miami alone, the rent for a one-bedroom apartment has exceeded $2,500 per month. In Orlando, it is around $1,800. Now think about it. How can someone earning minimum wage, about $13 an hour, equivalent to $2,200 a month before deductions, afford that? The numbers just don't add up. And what's even more frightening is that this situation has even reached professions considered stable. Nurses, teachers, civil servants, people who have always lived with dignity are now struggling to pay for the basics. Many are living in trailers, cheap motels, or depending on help from family. Others need 2 or even 3 jobs to make ends meet. And the group of working homeless people is only growing. People who work all day and sleep in their cars at night. That's when they have a car to sleep in. Number 4. Homeless. The housing crisis has gone beyond statistics and invaded the sidewalks. It is no longer possible to pretend that it is a hidden problem. Just to give you an idea, in 2024, more than 31,000 people were living on the streets in the state, according to the United States Department of Housing. And more than half of these people slept in tents, cars, or any other makeshift shelter, places that were clearly not meant for anyone to live in. And the numbers keep rising. According to the National Coalition for the Homeless, the number of homeless families has increased by more than 20% in just 12 months. And this is not a phenomenon isolated to large cities. In the northeast of the state alone, the number of people on the streets grew by more than 40% between 2023 and 2024, according to the point-in-time count report. Shelters are full. In Miami-Dade, for example, more than 85% of beds were already occupied in the first week of January, even before winter set in. The profile of those ending up on the streets has also changed. Families with children have grown by almost 22%. Mothers sleep with their children in cars. Elderly people face months of waiting for a place in a shelter. People who have jobs but can no longer afford rent are forced to live in trailers or makeshift camps. And these camps are spreading under overpasses in Miami, in parking lots in Tampa, on vacant lots in Orlando. Those who drive by only see the landscape, but those who live there are living a nightmare. And as in every urban nightmare, where there is a lack of housing, there is also violence. Number 5. Crime and urban violence. When you think of Florida, it is common to imagine safety, wide streets, constant policing, and cameras everywhere. But just leave the tourist areas to realize that in many places the reality is much bleaker. Some cities face serious public safety crises. One of the most extreme examples is Opa-locka, located in Miami-Dade County. With just over 16,000 residents, it has one of the highest rates of urban poverty in the state. More than half of the population lives below the poverty line. And where poverty takes hold, violence almost always finds a place. The violent crime rate there exceeds 12 per thousand inhabitants, almost double the state average, which is around 7 per thousand. Daylight robberies, shootings in the early hours of the morning, entire neighborhoods living under tension. Opa-locka has become a symbol of the collapse between social exclusion and crime. But unfortunately, it is not alone. In 2025, Florida recorded approximately 1,468 homicides. Although the rate is still below the national average, it represents an increase over previous years. And the hotspots of violence are spreading. Lake City, for example, has 78 violent crimes per thousand people, more than 4 times the state average. In Riviera Beach, the rates are also alarming. Even Miami, with all its international fame, has a rate of 10 violent crimes per thousand inhabitants. And in neighborhoods like Liberty City or Overtown, gangs fight for territory, and young people are recruited while still in their teens. Drug trafficking fuels much of this crisis. Florida's strategic location makes it a direct route for narcotics to enter the country. International cartels operate with force, while entire communities suffer the impact. While tourist areas continue to receive increased patrols, community policing, and state-of-the-art surveillance systems, poorer neighborhoods continue to deal with the law of the jungle. Those who live there do not wait for help. They learn to survive or to hide. But since we're talking about drugs, let's take a closer look at how they are devastating the state. Number 6. The opioid and synthetic drug epidemic. While tourists dance carefree at South Beach nightclubs, a silent tragedy is taking over the state. A drug addiction crisis that doesn't discriminate based on age, social class, or zip code. Florida has become one of the epicenters of the opioid epidemic in the United States. The main culprit? Fentanyl, a synthetic substance nearly 50 times more potent than heroin. A lethal dose costs less than $5 and circulates unchecked in high-poverty neighborhoods. In 2024, fentanyl alone was responsible for more than 6,000 deaths in the state, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, known by the acronym CDC. But this catastrophe did not begin on street corners. It began in doctors' offices. For years, Florida was nicknamed the pill mill capital. Clinics and doctors' offices operated as veritable distribution centers for opioid painkillers. Doctors prescribed powerful drugs such as OxyContin, Vicodin, and Percocet like candy, without testing, without criteria, and almost always with a profit motive. The result was devastating. Thousands of people became addicted for legitimate reasons: back pain, surgery, injury. But the body quickly becomes accustomed to the drugs. And when authorities began closing these clinics, the addiction was already ingrained. Without access to legal pills, addicts turned to the illegal market, where they found heroin and fentanyl for sale on every street corner. Today in Florida, overdoses kill more young people than car accidents, and the problem is no longer peripheral. It has invaded the middle class. College students are dying on elite campuses. Parents are finding their children unconscious in their bedrooms after taking something contaminated. In neighborhoods like Jacksonville, Tampa, and Fort Myers, rehabilitation centers are overflowing. Waiting lists are 3 to 4 months long. Meanwhile, drug dealers continue to make a fortune, selling death disguised as colorful pills. The state that was once synonymous with fun is now also a symbol of chemical dependency. Number 7. Mental health in collapse. If the drug crisis were not enough to sound the alarm, what can be said when it is compounded by a silent collapse of mental health? The situation in Florida is alarming. About 17 out of every 100 adults live with some type of mental disorder, according to 2024 data from Mental Health America. This includes severe depression, anxiety disorders, bipolar disorder, and other diagnoses that require constant monitoring. But access to treatment is far from keeping up with demand. In many parts of the state, there just aren't enough professionals. Public clinics are overwhelmed. Health insurance plans deny coverage for ongoing sessions, and wait times for care can exceed 90 days in cities like Orlando and Fort Lauderdale. Those who need immediate help often give up before they even get a first appointment. Young people are especially hard hit. More than 35% of LGBTQ+ youth in Florida said they had seriously considered taking their own lives in the past year, according to a survey by the Trevor Project, a U.S. organization that provides psychological support to young people in this community. Part of this stems from a hostile political landscape. In recent years, the state has passed laws limiting discussions about gender identity and sexuality in schools, leaving many teenagers without safe spaces to express themselves or seek support. And the effects of this neglect are showing up in hospitals. In 2023, the rate of hospitalizations for mental disorders was approximately 960 per 100,000 people, one of the highest in the country, according to the Florida Department of Health. This does not include cases that are not even reported, those that remain hidden behind closed doors, with families who do not know where to seek help. But it would be wrong to think that only young people are at risk. Number 8. Elder abuse and financial scams. In Florida, the elderly have also become an easy and profitable target for criminals. Now think of a person who has worked their entire life, retired, and decided to spend their final years in peace, facing the Florida Sea. That's right. Many people dreamed of this and ended up in a nightmare. Florida has one of the largest elderly populations in the United States. Nearly 20% of residents are over 65. It didn't take long for scammers to see an opportunity. And when we talk about scams, we're not talking about generic con artists. These are sophisticated schemes, some tailor-made to deceive those who are already vulnerable, often alone, without digital support, and with their savings in the bank. One of the most common is the so-called grandchild scam. The phone rings, and on the other end of the line, a trembling voice pretends to be a grandchild in trouble. They say they are in jail, sick, or in danger, and need money urgently. Many grandparents transfer thousands of dollars without checking the story, driven by fear and affection. There are scams involving non-existent real estate, fake investments, telemarketing calls, card cloning, phishing, and so on. The creativity is endless. Many seniors have lost everything: their homes, savings, their children's inheritance, and worse, sometimes they don't even report it. They feel ashamed or simply have no one to turn to. The situation has become so serious that the state had to create a task force just to investigate crimes against seniors. But in practice, it's like trying to wipe ice. Digital scams grow every day, change form, and criminals are always one step ahead. Worse still, the sense of impunity does not stop with anonymous scammers. It also extends to a category that steals with a suit and tie, speeches on the campaign trail, and a signed mandate. Number 9. Political corruption and suspicious business. Politics in Florida has always had a touch of spectacle. But behind the scenes, the script usually includes scandals, kickbacks, and embezzlement. The state has seen it all. Mayors arrested for money laundering, state representatives caught with envelopes full of bribes, public officials embezzling millions from social programs intended for the poorest. One of the most talked about names was that of former Congressman David Rivera, investigated for using campaign money as if it were his personal account, and for maintaining less than transparent relations with foreign interests. And this type of case is no exception. Politicians are being investigated for facilitating overpriced public works contracts, especially in civil construction. Money that should go to hospitals, schools, or transportation ends up in the pockets of friendly contractors, or comes back as campaign donations in the next election. But corruption here has a particular characteristic. It hides in the concrete of luxury towers. With the real estate market booming, especially in regions such as Miami, it is easy to find shady deals between developers and local authorities. Million-dollar projects are approved without clear bidding, public land is sold at symbolic prices, and tax exemptions are granted on a tailor-made basis. And it's not just a domestic scheme. Florida has become a global benchmark for real estate money laundering. Luxury apartments are bought in the name of shell companies by suspicious businessmen from Venezuela, Russian oligarchs, or Colombian bigwigs. Everything passes as a legitimate investment, but behind it all, dirty money is being recycled with an official stamp. With so much money coming in unchecked, little oversight, and a political system that turns a blind eye, corruption here is no accident. It's part of the plan. And who pays the price? Always the same people. The population already facing unaffordable rents, crowded hospitals, abandoned schools, and rising crime. People who ride dilapidated buses while contractors ride yachts. People who live in fear while corrupt politicians live with private security. The Florida that appears in the brochures is real, but it's only half the story. The other half hides behind Disney smiles, South Beach drinks, and gated communities. And for today, we end our journey through the dark side of Florida. Now tell me, did you already know about this other side of the state? What impressed you most about this story? Comment below and share with someone who still thinks Florida is just beaches, sun, and fun. Until next time,